I want to thank you all for coming out tonight to give me an opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you. I'm sure that you all recognize this face. I've been told all my life that it's pretty recognizable. If not for its good looks, I can tell you. Well, in my time, I've been called everything from common looking, unattractive, to downright ugly. No matter where I would go, people would comment on my looks. Back home in Springfield, I can remember a time I was standing out by my gate out in front of my house. Now I looked up the street, and there was this gentleman come walking down the street. Now I didn't know him, I didn't recognize him, but I watched him for a while. Finally, he noticed me. Well, he crossed the street, and he came directly up to me. He put his hand in his pocket, and he pulled out a jackknife. He handed it to me. But I looked at him, I said, "Excuse me, sir, what's this?" He said, "Let me tell you, when I was a youngster, my father gave me that jackknife, and he told me I had to hold on to it till I found somebody uglier than me. I guess it's yours now. You know, I haven't been able to get rid of it myself." Yeah. Seems it wasn't confined to my hometown. Even if I was taking a trip. One time, I took a ride on a train. Doesn't matter where I was headed. Good. I sat down, and I noticed there was an attractive young lady sitting across from me. Well, the train got started, we got moving. After a while, I caught her taking glances at me, and she kept looking at me. So after a little bit, I turned to her and I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, but can I help you?" Yeah. She looked at me and she said, "Sir, you are about the most unattractive man I have ever seen." Well, I looked at her and I said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but there's nothing I can do about that." She looked at me and she said, "Well, you could stay home." Even when I got into politics, it wouldn't stop. Why, newspapers would put out political cartoons and they'd call me the Great Baboon. Imagine that. I was in a debate once with Judge Stephen Douglas. He's up there speaking. It was his turn. Well, all of a sudden he turns and he points at me and he says, "Now, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Lincoln is two-faced." Well, he finished what he had to say and he sat down. It's my turn. I stood up. I looked out at the audience. Now I looked at them and I said, "My friends, my esteemed opponent, Judge Douglas, has said that I am two-faced. Now I ask you, if I had two faces, would I be wearing this one?" And it just wasn't my looks and my face. Why, people wouldn't want to comment on my height. I had this gentleman come up to me once and he said to me, "Excuse me, sir, but how long are your legs?" Well, long enough to reach the floor. Other people would want to know, "Excuse me, but was your grandfather this tall?" Well, let me tell you, I am less concerned about who my grandfather was than I am about what his grandson has become. Because every man must grow on his own. I wasn't always with the beard. No, most of my life I was clean shaven. But during the 1860 elections, October of 1860, I got a letter. It was from a young lady by the name of Grace Bedell from Wakefield, New York. And in the letters, well, she asked a large number of questions, such as you have any daughters, etc., etc. But she also said in that letter, "Sir, why don't you grow a beard? I think it would make you look so much more distinguished, and it would probably get you some more votes." Well, I'll leave it to you to decide whether or not it's more distinguished. Who knows how many votes it may have gotten me? Well, I learned early on in life that if I was going to make anything of myself, it was not going to be on my looks. No, I would have to find something else. And that something else was probably going to have to be my mind. I was very fortunate that both my mother and my stepmother, they put a great deal of store in reading and writing and ciphering to the factor of 3. Now, when we were living, we were out on the frontier, and there wasn't much in the way of schools out there. I didn't have any formal education except maybe 2 to 3 years of it, but I did have my mother and stepmother who took to teaching me right off. And what they weren't teaching me, I was reading, and I was being self-taught. Now, I admit freely that I have always been a rather slow learner, but I've been an even slower forgetter. It could take me some time on occasion to wrap my mind around some new idea, you see. But once I did, oh, it was stuck in there. Why, I was stuck in there like an iron pole in 3 feet of cement. It was not coming out. But I had to take to reading because, like I said, there was no proper schooling. There were no real teachers. Why, if a gentleman came riding through town spouting off some Latin words, he was immediately put up on that pedestal of teachers. But reading has always been one of my life's passions. I was always with a book in hand. From the very earliest age, I loved to read. And even today, I would say that my best friend would be the person who would give me a book that I had not yet read. No matter where I went, what I was doing, I was always with a book, or there was one close at hand. Why, when I was a youngster and working in the fields doing my chores, any time that I took a break, you'd see me sitting there in the fields or sitting on a stump or by a fence line. And I was reading. When my chores were over, I came back to the house. First thing I did, took a piece of cheese out of the cupboard. I would sit down by the fire, curl up. This wasn't easy to do with my long legs. I would sit to read. I can remember that we always had 2 books in my house. Aesop's Fables. Oh, I dearly loved Aesop's Fables. All of those stories and then all of the morals at the end of them. I can honestly tell you that it wasn't long before I realized that all of the original ideas that a person believes they're having, through reading, you find out they're not so original after all. The other book that we always had was the Bible. Now, I will admit to you that maybe I did not do as much reading in the Bible as my mother and stepmother would have had me to, especially when I was younger. Though I will say, nowadays, I get up every morning and the first thing I do is grab my Bible and read something in it. But I did back then read enough to get at least a good foundation for religion. And I have a deep, abiding belief in the existence of God. Yes, it's true that I am not, never have been a member of an organized religion, nor have I ever been a member of any particular church, but I have always believed in God. You see, part of the situation is this, that any time that I'm watching a preacher preach, I want to see him like he's out there fighting bees. The day that I walk into a church and I see written above the altar the words of the gospel, thou shalt love thy Lord God with all thy heart and thy soul and thy might, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thy love thyself. That will be the church for me. I can understand how anyone can look down on the earth and be an atheist. But I cannot understand how anyone can look up into the stars and the heavens at night and not believe in God. Now, as I grew older, I began reading all kinds of books. Great many different authors. Two of my favorites in life have been Shakespeare and Sir Robert Burns. Now, there was a man who knew how to use the English language. What a gift the gifty gives to see ourselves as others see us. I only wish I could figure out what a gift he was. That reminds me. Do you all know what the definition of the word tact is? Tact. The ability to describe someone in the manner in which they will describe themselves. Let me tell you a little bit about my early life. I actually stayed down on the farm till I was about 21 years of age. Primary reason was that the state of Illinois at that time had a law whereby your parents could keep you in the home until you were 21 years of age and keep you working there. And my father did that. But I can tell you, when I turned 21, I was on my way. By the time I was 22, I had already had 2 trips down the Mississippi River on a flatboat. Matter of fact, when I came back from that second trip, a gentleman offered me the job of manager of a general store up in Van Dalen. No, I'm sorry, that was in New Salem. I immediately packed my bag. Of course, that's all I needed for what I owned at the time. And I was off to New Salem. Now, I had never been the manager of anything. I thought this might be a fine thing to do. And I will admit that started off quite well. Unfortunately, it turned out that New Salem was a town with 4 general stores and the capability to support 3 of them. I guess you can imagine what happened to mine. Well, here I was looking for a job again. So I went back to the things that I had known best in my youth. I did some farming for people. I did some rail splitting, land surveying, while I was even a postmaster of the town for a while. while I was living there in New Salem, I had a room over one of the other more lucrative general stores in town. This one was owned by a gentleman by the name of James Rutledge. And it was his daughter, Ann, who was the manager of the store. Now, Mr. Rutledge, he also had the finest library in this whole part of the country. And he was a very generous man. He told me that I could borrow and read any and all the books he had in his library at any time. And I took him up on it. Well, it wasn't long before I realized a couple of things about his daughter, Ann. Not only was she the most attractive woman in this part of the country, but she had a mind to match. And I quickly found out she was pulling every book out of that library she could, and she was reading them. Oh, I can't tell you all the wonderful times that she and I had. Nights when the store was closed up, we'd be sitting there in the general store. Or during the day, we would take walks and sit out there on the meadows, and we would just read those books together. Or we'd discuss the ones that we had read, each of us. Wasn't long before I found myself falling in love with Ann. She was reciprocating. But we had one small, minor problem. She was already engaged to somebody else. And as we discussed it, she told me that she could not break off the engagement and get engaged to me unless she broke off the engagement in person. Now here's where the problem came in. You see, the gentleman that she had been engaged to, well, he had come west from New York City to make his fortune. When he did, he looked at her and he told her he was going back east, pick up his family, and bring them west with him. That was some 3 years ago. She hadn't heard from him since. But she had to do the honorable thing. And for her, that was telling him in person that she was going to break the engagement. Now, I could understand this, doing the honorable thing. So we waited. Finally, we began talking even more seriously about marriage. But that was not to be. August 1832, and come down with the fever. Lasted for about 2 weeks, and then she was gone. I was devastated. True, I had lost other loved ones in my life, but nothing hit me like this did. Why, my friends heard me say that I could not even stand to see the rain falling on her grave. I went into a deep state of melancholia. It was the blackest state I had ever been in. My friends said they were afraid for me. The times that they saw me walking off into the woods with my gun, they were worried I wasn't going to be coming back. Well, lasted about a month. Finally, I got to thinking and thinking deeply. And I decided that there were 2 or more ways of looking at things in life. one can either complain that rose bushes have thorns, or one can rejoice that thorn bushes have roses. Now, I had lost my rose, but it was time for me to get back to life. So, I needed another job. Now, I can tell you, my father, he taught me how to work, but he never taught me to enjoy it. And I can tell you, I never liked working. I would rather be sitting and telling stories or telling jokes with my friends or reading a book or anything but working. So I decided that I was going to go become a politician. So I put my name in and I made a run for the Illinois State Legislature. Well, as things transpired, right at the start of the campaign, the Black Hawk Indian War began. Now, being the strapping young man that I immediately volunteered for the state militia to go off to fight. Now, unfortunately, what that did was it pulled me completely out of the campaign season for that run at the State House. Well, I'm afraid that nothing came of that. But 2 years later, I ran again, and I was elected. I was now a member of the Illinois State Legislature as a member of the Whig Party. I can tell you, you meet some mighty strange people in politics. There was this fella who had the uncanny ability to compress the most words into the least amount of ideas that I have ever heard. One of my proudest moments in my early career as a politician, I was the co-author of the very first bill that came forth in the state of Illinois calling for equal and fair treatment of the free blacks of our state. Come to find out later that it was probably the first one in the entire country. Now, given the state of affairs of the nation at that time, there was not enough support behind it to get it passed. But nonetheless, I am quite proud of the fact that I was a co-author of that bill. It wasn't very long before I became a very prominent member of the Whig Party. I had people looking up to me, coming to me for advice. Why, when I spoke, members of my party listened. There was one incident I recall whereby the members of the Democratic Party, now they had this bill that they wanted to bring up for a vote. Now they had to have a quorum in there in the assembly room to get the vote even up in front of us. They walked in on this particular day, all of them. There were only a few of us Whigs sitting in there in the assembly room. Now there were enough of us to count as a quorum, but there were not enough of us to defeat that bill. Well, they came in, they fanned out around the room, and they blocked all of the doors. There was no way through the doors. So I looked at my fellow Whigs and I said, "Gentlemen, it is now time for us to go through the windows." And we did. And I don't think that bill ever came up for a vote. Well, I served 2 terms at that time. And then the good people of Illinois got the good sense to vote me out. Once again, I was looking for a new career. Well, I had done a lot of reading in my day up to this point. I had even read Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England, and I found them fascinating. So I said to myself, I want to become a lawyer. Now, one of the fortunate things to come out of the Black Hawk War for me was meeting a fellow by the name of John Todd Stewart. And he was one of the most prominent attorneys in New Salem at the time. And I talked with him, and he said to me that he would be happy to take me on in his firm as a junior partner, and he would teach me all he could about the law. I could read everything that he had there in his office. Well, he kept his word, and it wasn't long before I was an attorney. Well, after a few years of this, I was re-elected to the state legislature. The interesting thing is that in the couple of years that I've been out, the state of Illinois was constantly growing. Population was growing, expanding in the territories that were occupied, and it was decided we needed a permanent capital for our state. See, up to this point, the capital had been in the city of Vandalia. Well, the town anyway. And we decided we needed a more permanent location. A bill came forth, and there were 3 towns vying for this honor: Springfield, New Salem, and of course Vandalia itself. Now, I could see that it was very important with the state growing as it was, that we needed a central location for the capital. A place that was accessible to everyone. A place with transportation lines running into it from all over the state. And only one of the 3 that fit the bill, as far as I was concerned, was Springfield. And that got my vote. And it was selected. Well, it was time to move again. So this time I packed up all my worldly goods and 2 saddlebags. I'd gotten a few more worldly goods. Got on my horse and I rode over to Springfield. Now, as soon as I got into town, first thing that I saw was a general store. Pulled up to it, hitched up my horse, walked in. I met the proprietor standing right there, a fellow by the name of Joshua Speed, the owner. Now, I didn't know Mr. Speed when I walked in there, but he seemed to know me. I asked him how he knew me. He said, well, I've been following politics for a long time, and of course I have seen you speak. Well, thank you, Mr. Speed. And I can tell you folks that he and I are still best friends to this day. Well, I looked at him, and I said to him, excuse me, Mr. Speed, but do you know of any place by chance where I might rent a room? He said, no, sir, I'm afraid that I don't know that there's any of them available. He said, but I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, you can go upstairs and take a look. I have a huge loft up there with a huge bed. If you like the setting, you're welcome to move in. When I looked at him, I said, but Speed, I don't have any money with me at the moment. I do expect my prospects to get better, and by December I should be able to pay you all that I might owe. He said, that's all right. I take a chance on you. So I said, fine. I walked upstairs. I looked at this huge loft. I looked at the big bed. I dropped my saddlebags on the floor, walked downstairs and said, Speed, I'm moved in. And that was my arrival in Springfield. Well, let me tell you, at that time, Springfield was not the metropolis that it has become. No, it was still a backwoods country town. Why, the streets weren't paved, there weren't even sidewalks. I can tell you, it got so dusty that in the summer that it would be above my head. When it rained, the mud would be up to my knees, probably up to your chest, but it was a dirty, filthy town at that time. Why? There were more wild pigs running around the streets of Springfield than there were politicians. Sometimes it was tough telling the difference between, my apologies to the pigs. It was so bad. I remember the story that there was a supplicant to come riding into town. Now he rode up to the State House and he went in and he found the manager of the State House. And he looked at him and he said, "Excuse me, sir, but I would like to borrow one of your assembly rooms that may not be in use so that I might preach some sermons." And the manager looked at him and said, "Well, sir, what would be the topic of these sermons?" And the supplicant said, "I will be preaching on the second coming of the Lord." And the manager just started laughing. And the supplicant looked at him and said, "Excuse me, sir, but why are you laughing?" And the manager looked at him and said, "Listen, sir, if I was you, I would give that up as a lost cause, because I can tell you that if the Lord had ever been in Springfield once, he was not coming back again." Well, one of the other nice things about being up in Springfield for me was my association with John Todd Stewart. Not only was he one of the finest attorneys in the area and in Springfield, but he was also in the legislature, so you could see that we were basically neighbors in politics. Now, John Todd Stewart was also one of the more prominent citizens of the city of Springfield. And he took to introducing me to all the prominent people that he knew. One of the first families that I met were Mr. Ninian Edwards and his wife Elizabeth. Her name was Elizabeth Todd Edwards. Now, she and John Todd Stewart were cousins. They both come from Kentucky, moved up to Illinois. And her father was Mr. Robert Todd of the Todds of Kentucky. He was one of the most prominent and richest men in western Kentucky. Why, people thereabouts said that he must be more important than God, because God only needed one D to spell his name, and Robert Todd needed two. Now, about this time, Elizabeth's sister Mary was spending time with them. And I was invited to all kinds of parties and dances and dinners. I remember one of the first dances I ever went to over there at the Edwards house. I walked in and I looked over, but there was Mary Todd standing in the corner surrounded by her friends. But I walked over to her and I said, "Miss Todd, I would love to dance with you in the worst way." Shortly thereafter, she told all her friends. I immediately went and proved it. But Mary and I quickly found that we had a lot in common. Why, we began corresponding with each other, seeing each other whenever we could, spending time together. Quickly we found that we were falling in love. After a while, I asked her to marry me, and she said that she would. And there we were, engaged. Well, I can tell you, the longer this engagement went on, the colder my feet got. I started to feel really bad about this. I felt that I was being unfair to Mary, making her spend the rest of her life with me. I wasn't worthy of her. But I didn't know how to tell her. I felt the honorable thing was to maintain the engagement and not break it off. Well, it seems, ladies and gentlemen, that events have a way of overtaking us all. About this time, the Edwardses got a visitor. Her name was Matilda Edwards. She was Ninian's sister. She came up from Kentucky to spend some time with the family. Well, let me tell you, she indeed was the most beautiful woman I had ever set my eyes upon. In no time at all, she had every eligible bachelor in Springfield at her door clamoring just to get in and say a few words. Why, there were times there was a line going out the door, down the stairs, and out the gate. And I don't mind telling you, I was in that line a time or two. Well, wasn't long before Mary figured it all out. But how could she not? Not only was she sharing a room with Miss Matilda, they were sharing a bed. She was bound to find out. She came to me, and she told me that she would be happy to let me out of the engagement, but that I should understand that if I should ever change my mind, she would be there waiting. I can't tell you how elated I was when she told me that. There I was out of the engagement, and I could press forward my suit to beautiful Miss Matilda. And I did it immediately. And in less time than that, Miss Matilda let me know, as well as every other bachelor in Springfield, she had no interest in any of us. She already had a fella back in Kentucky. Wasn't long and she was heading home. I felt terrible. It wasn't just that I had been rebuffed by Miss Matilda, but I felt terrible how I had treated Mary. You see, when I do good, I feel good. But when I do bad, I feel bad. And I had done bad. Now, many a man has been made a fool of by a woman, but I can honestly tell you that wasn't me. No, sir. I didn't need one to make a fool of me. I did that quite by myself. But this whole affair drove me once again into a deep state of melancholy. This one was even worse than the one before. I could not shake it. I could not bring myself out. I could not do anything in life at this point. Friends would say that they would pass my desk in the legislature, and I'd be sitting there looking up, with my head in my arms on my desk. It was so bad I went to doctors to see what they could do to help me. And I will not tell you the things that they did to me. This just went on. It lasted for about a year. Well, finally, I decided to leave Springfield for a little while. And I went down to Kentucky to visit with my friend Joshua Speed. Now, he had gotten married since and had moved with his new bride down to Kentucky. I spent about a month down there with him and his new wife. And it was this time that finally brought me out of my funk, out of this deep feeling of melancholia. Why, being in that idyllic setting meeting all the new, friendly people that you find down there in Kentucky saved my life. I can honestly say that I am where I am today because a friend believed in me and I did not have the heart to let him down. So I bid them goodbye, and I came back to Springfield and I got back to work. Now, as it turned out, wasn't long that I was back home when a friend of mine, a woman that I knew fairly well, invited me to dinner. Turns out she was also a very good friend of Mary's. Invited her to dinner. Didn't let either one of us know. Imagine our surprise where there we were sitting across the table from each other. Well, we got to conversing, and in no time at all we discovered we still had feelings for each other, and we still had so much in common. We started seeing each other, we started corresponding, we would meet at our friend's house, and we would go out for rides and take walks, and well, almost in no time at all. Matter of fact, it was November the 2nd, 1842, and I asked Mary if she would be my wife. And again, she said yes. But we were not making the same mistake we made the last time. Oh, indeed. November the 3rd, the next day, I was across the street visiting with the Episcopalian minister. And I went up to him and I said, "Sir, would you officiate at my wedding?" And he said, "Sure. When is it?" I said, "Tomorrow." It all happened so fast. Even my best man, a gentleman by the name of James Mahaney, didn't find out till the morning of the wedding. And I looked at him, I said, "Jim, I guess I gotta marry that girl." I was still having some second thoughts, I must admit. Even that morning when I was getting dressed for the wedding, there was a young man standing there watching me. He looked up and he said, "Hey, mister, where are you going?" I looked at him and I said, "Well, son, I guess to hell." But November the 4th, we had the ceremony and we were married. We were married in the home of her sister Elizabeth and brother-in-law Ninian. But they were taken so by surprise, even though they insisted we have it there. Her sister Elizabeth baked us a wedding cake, and when we cut it open, it was still hot on the inside. But I can tell you, Mary and I are still married to this day. Oh, yes, we have had our ups and downs. We've had our moments. But remember, no matter how much cats may fight, still a lot of kittens running around. Well, wasn't long after we got married that I decided I wanted to try for something a little bit bigger. I wanted to get into national politics. Now, like I said, I was pretty prominent in the Whig Party. So they happily, in 1846, put me up to run for the Congress of the United States from the state of Illinois. And I won. Off to Washington City we went, and I took my seat in Congress in 1846. Now, at about this time, the Mexican War was just starting up. Now, I could see this war for what it was. As far as I was concerned, the sole purpose behind this war with Mexico was to obtain more land, more territory for the United States in the Southwest. Why? So that our southern brethren would have more territory to expand their peculiar institution of slavery. All my life, I have been opposed to that institution of slavery. I had my first personal run-in on my second trip down to Mississippi to New Orleans. When we arrived and got off the boat and started walking around, I was appalled at what I saw. On any given street corner there in New Orleans was the auction block. Lines of black humanity chained together, inching their way forward and waiting their turn just to be sold off like any other property. Men, women, children, families being torn apart, men being sold one way and their wives another, and the children still a third. Right then and there, I knew someday, somehow, this had to be stopped. Why, even now, anytime I hear someone speaking out in favor of slavery, I just want to see it tried out on them. Any man who wishes to deprive another man of his freedom deserves to have that freedom deprived of himself. Now, I was very fortunate to meet and to make friends with other prominent politicians who believed as I did. Two gentlemen in particular come to mind. Henry Clay of Kentucky, who was indeed considered one of the foremost politicians of the day, and ex-President John Quincy Adams. One of the proudest things in my life is being able to call these two gentlemen my friends. And when John Quincy Adams passed away, Henry Clay and I were among the pallbearers. Now, I knew that the state of the country at that time, and the general feeling that there was no way that we would be able to eliminate slavery in the country at this point. But I was vowed and determined that I would fight the expansion of slavery with every fiber of my body. Well, in the end, as you all may remember, we won that war. We got that territory. I spent my 2 years in Congress. And after that was over, well, let me tell you that the Whig Party of Illinois, they had this, shall we say, procedure whereby all prominent members of the party who wished to serve in Congress would have their term. So therefore, if you served a term, you naturally step down the next time round and let somebody else have their turn. So, there I was, back in Springfield, and back into being a lawyer. This was about the time when I got the sobriquet of Honest Abe, because it has always been my thought that you must be as honest with everybody in all your dealings as you can. For you must know that if ever you were to lose the confidence of your fellow citizens, you can never regain that. Because you may be able to fool some of the people all of the time, and you may be able to fool all of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time. So you may as well start out not fooling any of the people any of the time. And this is how I treated all the people that I worked with. No matter what legal brief I was working on, honesty was my policy. I remember a time I had done some work for a gentleman. When it was completed, I received an envelope from him. There was $25 in that envelope thanking me for my work. Well, I grabbed another envelope. I took 10 of those dollars and I put it in that envelope. I then wrote a note. I said, "Dear sir, I have received your $25 and I'm returning 10 of it. The work I did was only worth 15. There was another moment. I was representing the fellow, and we were suing another gentleman for a rather large sum of money. I was sitting in my office one day, and an attorney for the other fellow came in. He walked up and he sat down by my desk and he looked at me and he said, "Mr. Lincoln," said, "my client feels very strongly about this case and we are prepared to give you personally $500 if you get your client to drop the case." I just looked at him. I said, "Mr. Lincoln, you are one tough man to deal with. We are prepared to give you $1,000 if you will get your client to drop the case." I just looked at him. I said, "Mr. Lincoln, you are one tough negotiator. We will give you $1,500 personally if you will get your client to drop the case." Well, with that, I stood up. I grabbed him by the scruff of the neck, the seat of the pants. I picked him up and I threw him out of my office. Well, he picked himself up and he brushed himself off. And he looked at me and he said, "Mr. Lincoln, what you do that for?" And I looked at him and I said, "You've heard the old saying that every man has his price. Well, you were getting too close to mine." One of the other things that I so enjoyed about being an attorney was what we call riding the circuit. Now, let me explain it to you. The state of Illinois had been broken up into what we called a number of circuits. Every circuit had its own judge assigned to it, and that judge, twice a year, like every 6 months, would go out and ride around to every one of the towns and the villages in his circuit, and therefore would make a circuit. Now, I just love to partake of this. Now, these riding of the circuits would go on for about 3 months each, I can tell you. Now, there were 2 particular reasons where I was especially happy to partake in this. Now, of course, financially, I will admit it was quite lucrative. But one of the prime reasons that I love to ride the circuit twice a year, well, I don't mind admitting to you, Mary can have quite the temper. Oh, yes. When she gets going, it's like a volcano Vesuvius erupted. Now, it's not enough to bury Pompeii, but it's enough for me to want to get out of town. The other reason, well, you see, we had done this for so long. When the judges would announce they were riding the circuit, all of the attorneys in Springfield would get on their horses or get in their buggies and just join the parade, and off we would go. We had been doing it for so long, we were all pretty good friends. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing I enjoyed more than after a tough day handling all the various legal problems that we were coming up with, we would all meet up one of the local general stores, in the lobby of the hotel or in the tavern, and we would sit there for the evening swapping jokes and telling stories. Well, I admit I had quite a reputation as a joke teller and a storyteller myself. If y'all didn't know this.
Excuse me, Mr. President.
Yes.
You have a dispatch from the War Department?
Oh, yes, thank you. Please, if y'all will excuse me for just a little bit while I handle this situation, I appreciate it. This might be a good time for you all to take a break or an intermission, so to speak, and I should return in about 15 minutes. I do thank you for your patience and for your kindness. I shall be back soon. Thank you.